Cavalier County, Dakota Territory, April 1892. While every homesteader in the territory was building separate cabins on separate claims, for Polish families were doing something that made their American neighbors ride over just to call them gravediggers. The immigrants had built for cabins 200 feet apart in a square, then spent the entire summer digging underground tunnels connecting all four homes 8 feet beneath the frozen prairie. The Poles have lost their minds. They're digging their own graves out there. Nobody understood what Stanislaw knew about tunnels and connected living that would keep 4 families alive all winter without ever stepping outside. Subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Stanislaw Kowalik had spent 28 years learning how to survive winters that try to kill anyone who stepped outside. Born in a village near Lublin in eastern Poland, he grew up in a region where January storms buried entire homesteads and families died walking between their cabin and their barn. The survivors had learned centuries earlier that the answer was not braving the cold, but avoiding it entirely. They dug tunnels, passages beneath the frozen earth, connecting homes to barns, cellars to wells, neighbor to neighbor. A man who never went outside, never froze outside. His grandfather had helped dig the tunnel system that connected 7 farms. In their village, each passage ran 8 feet beneath the surface where earth held steady temperature regardless of what raged above. Wooden supports kept the ceilings from collapsing. Packed earth walls needed no maintenance. A farmer could walk underground from his kitchen to his barn, milk his cows, gather eggs, and return home without ever feeling wind or snow. Children walked to neighbors' homes through passages their great-grandfathers had carved. The village lived connected beneath the surface, while winter howled uselessly above. The tunnels served purposes beyond mere convenience. Underground passages held 50 degrees year-round, warm enough that pipes never froze, stored vegetables never spoiled, and travelers between buildings arrived warm rather than frostbitten. A man caught in a blizzard above ground could die walking 50 feet. The same man walking 50 foot underground arrived comfortable and alive. The tunnels transformed deadly journeys into pleasant strolls. Stanislaw arrived in Dakota Territory in the spring of 1890, following labor recruiters who promised Polish farmers cheap land and new beginnings. He claimed 160 acres in Cavalier County near the Canadian border. Flat, treeless land that reminded him of the Polish plains in all the wrong ways, the same brutal winters, the same killing storms. But none of the tunnel networks his village had built over generations. 3 other Polish families settled nearby that same spring. Wojek Mazer, a carpenter from Kov, claimed the quarter section to the east. Tadeusz Wiśniewski, a blacksmith from Poznań, took the land to the north. Patryk Kaminski, a young farmer from Łódź, settled to the west. For Polish families forming a rough square, each building separate cabins on separate claims as the Americans had shown them. Their first Dakota winter taught them the cost of separation. The storms came without warning. White walls of wind and snow that reduced visibility to nothing in minutes. A man could not see his barn from his cabin door. Walking 100 feet to feed livestock became a death sentence. The Mazur family lost 2 chickens and nearly lost Wojciech himself when he became disoriented in a blizzard walking between house and hen house. The Wizicki children spent 3 days trapped indoors when snow buried their door too. The Lintil, Patryk Kamen's wife, gave birth during a January storm with no midwife able to reach her through the killing white. Zofia saw it every storm. The isolation, the terror of watching her husband disappear into white nothing to tend. Animals they could not abandon. The helplessness of knowing neighbors lived 200 feet away, but might as well have been in Warsaw for all the help they could provide. In Lublin, we would have tunnels, she said one February night, watching snow pile against windows while Stanislaw paced unable to check his livestock. We would walk beneath the storm to the Mazurs, to the Wiśniewskis. The children would play together while Wind raged above. Here we sit alone watching each other's chimneys smoke, and cannot reach each other. Here they build cabins naked on the prairie and wonder why they die walking to their barns. Stanislaw stared at the floor beneath his feet. The earth below us holds 50 degrees, while the air above kills in Poland. We would dig, we would connect, we would survive together instead of dying apart. By spring he had made his decision. He would convince the other 3 families to spend the summer digging tunnels, connecting all 4 cabins 8 feet beneath the surface. The Americans would call them gravediggers. He would show them graves that kept families alive. The argument came on a warm May evening when Stanislaw gathered the 3 other Polish families at his cabin to show them the plans he had drawn on brown paper. For cabins, for families, but connected beneath the ground. He spread the sketches across his rough wooden table, showing a square arrangement with lines running between each corner. Tunnels 8 feet deep, 5 feet tall, 4 feet wide. A man can walk upright. A woman can carry a child. We connect every cabin to every other cabin. No family stands alone. Wojek Mazer studied the drawing. His carpenter's is, I'm measuring distances. 200 feet between cabins, 4 tunnels. Connecting the square, plus 2 crossing through the center. That is over 1,000 FT of digging, Stanislaw. An entire summer of labor. An entire summer, too. Save every winter that follows. Stanislaw traced the tunnel routes with his finger. We dig 8 foot down where earth holds 50 degrees. Wooden supports every 6 feet, packed earth walls, oil lamps and niches. By October, we walked between homes without ever seeing sky. Tados. Vyzntki leaned forward, his blacksmith's shoulders filling the chair. My wife nearly died in childbirth because no one could reach us through the storm. If tunnels had connected us to the Kaminskis, their mother could have helped. Instead, Marta delivered alone, while I stood helpless. The children, Patra Kaminsky added, quietly, my daughters have not seen the Ms. So girls in 3 months. They live 200 feet away, and might as well live in Łódź underground. They could visit every day, regardless of weather. Zofia snorts. Kowalik stood beside her husband, her expression showing the memory of every storm spent in isolation. In Lublin, the tunnels meant we were never alone. Storm or calm, we could reach our neighbors. Our children grew up together. Our families helped each other. Here we sit in separate boxes, waiting for weather to permit what tunnels would allow. Always, word reached the settlement within 3 weeks. Charles Whitmore, an American rancher who had homesteaded in Cavalier County for 15 years, rode over in late May to see if the rumors were true. He found all 4 Polish families digging a massive trench running between 2 cabins. Kowalik, Whitmore called from his horse. Folks in Langdon are saying you Poles are digging graves out here. They say you're tunneling underground like moles, connecting your cabins beneath the prairie. Stanislaw set down his shovel and stood wiping sweat from his forehead. Not graves, passages. 8 foot down where earth stays warm. We connect all 4 homes so families can reach each other without facing storms. Underground tunnels. Whitmore laughed. Not crewy, but with genuine disbelief. You're going to spend all summer digging holes instead of breaking sod and planting crops. What happens when those tunnels collapse and bury your families? Alive? Wooden supports every 6 feet packed earth that has stood in Poland for 200 years. Our grandfathers dug tunnels. Our fathers maintained them. We walked beneath storms our whole lives. Stanislaw gestured at the trench taking shape. Your people die walking to their barns in blizzards. Our people walk underground and arrive warm. A man belongs above ground, not burrowing like a badger. What you're building is unnatural. What is unnatural is dying 50 feet from your own door because you cannot see through snow. Stanislaw picked up his shovel. Last winter, 3 men died in this county, walking between buildings they could not find in storms. This winter, our families will walk underground and live. Your people can keep dying above ground if they prefer. Zofia watched Whitmore ride away, shaking his head. She turned to her husband, her expression showing quiet determination. He thinks we dig graves. We dig life. Stanislaw drove his shovel into earth that would soon become a passage. Our December will teach him what graves look like when his neighbors freeze above ground and ours visit each other below it. What Stanislaw Kowalik understood. From 28 years of Polish village life, modern geothermal engineers would later quantify with precision. But the principles he was applying had been tested through centuries of tunnel construction in a region where stepping outside in winter meant risking death. The fundamental insight was that Earth temperature remains stable regardless of surface conditions. At 8 feet below ground, the soil holds a constant 50 to 55 degrees year-round. Warm in winter, cool in summer, unchanging regardless of whether the surface above bakes at 90 degrees or freezes at -40. This thermal stability exists because Earth is an enormous insulator. Surface temperature fluctuations penetrate only a few feet before the mass of soil absorbs and dampens them too. Nothing. 8 foot down, the Earth remembers neither summer nor winter. It simply holds steady. The mathematics work decisively in favor of underground passage. A man walking 200 feet above ground in a January blizzard faced wind chill of -50 degrees, visibility of 0 feet, and disorientation. That could kill him before he traveled halfway. The same man walking 200 feet underground faced 50 degrees air, perfect visibility by oil lamp, and a straight passage that could not disorient him regardless of conditions above. The surface journey risked death. The underground journey risked nothing. The tunnel construction principles have been refined over generations. Depth of 8 feet ensured stable temperature and sufficient soil coverage to prevent collapse. Width of 4T allowed 2 people to pass each other or a man to carry supplies comfortably. Height of 5 feet permitted upright walking for most adults while minimizing excavation volume. Wooden supports every 6 feet distributed the weight of soil above, preventing cave-ins even under heavy snow loads. Packed earth walls needed no lining. The soil compressed and stabilized itself over time, growing stronger rather than weaker with age. The connected network provided benefits beyond simple passage. For cabins, connected by tunnels became a single compound rather than 4 isolated structures. Supplies could be shared without facing weather. Skills could be pulled. Today, the blacksmith could repair tools for all 4 families without anyone braving storms. A medical emergencies could draw help from 3 neighboring families within minutes. Children could be watched by any mother in the network while others worked. The isolation that killed frontier families vanished when tunnels made neighbors accessible in any conditions. The tunnel system also provided emergency shelter. If fire destroyed a cabin above ground, the family could shelter in the tunnel system while neighbors provided aid. If illness struck one household, others could bring food and medicine through passages that required no one to face killing weather. If a blizzard trapped families for weeks, the connected network allowed pooling of resources, food shared, fuel distributed, no family left to starve alone while neighbors had surplus. The earth itself added thermal benefits to the passage. Tunnel walls at 50 degrees radiated gentle warmth into the passage. A person walking underground in January moved through air 40 degrees warmer than the surface. Comfortable in regular clothing rather than heavy winter gear. The tunnels functioned as heated corridors connecting heated homes, an entire infrastructure of warmth beneath a surface of killing cold. Stanislaw's American neighbors saw tunnels as graves, dark holes where people did not belong. Stanislaw saw tunnels as arteries connecting a living community, passages that transformed 4 isolated families into one cooperative unit that could survive conditions that killed individuals standing alone. The same storms that trapped Americans in separate cabins, watching each other's chimney smoke, would find Polish families visiting Underground, sharing meal, eyes helping with births, playing cards while wind raged uselessly above. The surface belonged to winter. The tunnels belonged to those who refused to let winter separate them. Construction began in early June 1892. As soon as the ground thawed enough to dig properly, the four families divided the labor systematically. Each family took responsibility for excavating from their own cabin toward the center of the square, meeting their neighbors halfway. Stanislaw and Wojciech dug toward each other from the south. Tados and Pote dug toward each other from the north. When the perimeter tunnels connected, they would dig the two diagonal passages that crossed through the center, giving every family direct access to every other family. The digging consumed June and July entirely. Each tunnel required removing approximately 800 cub-feet of earth for T wide, 5 foot tall, and 200 feet long. The four perimeter tunnels totaled 3,200 cub-feet. The two diagonal crossings added another 2,200 cub-feet. Over 5,000 cub-feet of Dakota soil had to be loosened, lifted, hauled to the surface, and distributed across the prairie. The men worked in shifts. 2 digging below, while 2 hauled soil above, rotating every 2 hours to prevent exhaustion. The first 8 foot down were the hardest. Each cabin required a vertical shaft, descending to tunnel depth, a whole 4 foot square and 8 feet deep with wooden ladder. Rungs set into the walls. Stanislaw dug his shaft in 4 days, fighting roots and rocks and clay that resisted every shovel stroke. When he finally stood 8 ft below his cabin floor, the air felt different, cooler, calmer. The 50 degrees earth surrounded him like an embrace, indifferent to the June heat blazing above. The horizontal tunnels went faster. Once at depth, the men could stand and swing picks without fighting gravity. Soil loosened. At face level fell at their feet for easy shoveling. Voigt designed wooden frames, support structures shaped like doorways that braced ceiling and walls. Simultaneously, they installed one every 6 feet, creating a rib cage of timber that distributed the weight of soil above across the entire tunnel length. By late July, the first tunnel connected. Stanislaw swung his pick and broke through into darkness, then saw lamplight approaching from the other side. Wojciech's grinning face emerged from the gloom. 200 feet of passage now connected the Kowala cabin to the Mazer cabin 8 feet beneath the prairie surface. The men embraced in the middle, standing in earth-temperature air, while summer blazed uselessly above. The other connections followed through August. Tados and Pote completed the northern perimeter. The eastern and western tunnels linked up by mid-Mon. The diagonal crossings took longest, 280 feet each, but by late August, all 6 passages stood complete. A person could walk from any cabin to any other cabin, entirely underground, choosing either perimeter routes or direct diagonal shortcuts. The finishing work consumed. September. The families packed the earth walls smooth, eliminating protrusions that might catch clothing or collapse. Over time, they carved niches every 50 feet for oil lamps, providing light throughout the network. They installed wooden doors at each cabin entrance, heavy barriers that could seal the tunnel system against cold air. Infiltration. They laid wooden planks along the floor of high-trough sections to prevent mud. During wet seasons, Sophia Kowalik walked the completed network on the first evening of October. She descended the ladder in her own kitchen, walked 200 feet to the Mazur cabin, climbed into their kitchen, visited with Wojciech's wife for an hour, then returned underground to the Wysoki cabin to check on Marta's new baby, then through the diagonal passage to the Kaminskis to borrow flour, then home again. For visits, 4 families, 0 time spent outside. It is like the village, she said quietly, emerging into her own kitchen. With flour in hand, like Lublin. We are connected again. Storm or calm, we can reach each other. The children can play together. The women can work together. We are not alone anymore. Stanislaw pressed his palm against the wooden door that sealed the tunnel entrance. December will bring storms that killed men last winter. This December, we will walk beneath those storms and visit our neighbors for tea. The Americans will huddle in separate cabins, watching each other smoke. We will live together, underground while they die alone above. By late October, the Polish tunnel network had become the most discussed construction in Cavalier County. The summer curiosity had shifted into something closer to genuine alarm as neighbors realized the 4 immigrant families had actually connected their homes beneath the prairie and were using the passages daily regardless of weather. It's unnatural, one farmer's wife declared at the general store in Langdon. Those Poles living underground like moles, their children crawling through dirt tunnels instead of walking in God's sunlight. They've built themselves a catacomb out there, a grave they're too foolish to lie down in. The practical objections multiplied as temperatures dropped. Charles Whitmore rode over in early November with new concerns, his breath steaming in the cold morning air. Kowalik, I've been thinking about your arrangement, he said, sitting his horse at the edge of the property. What happens when spring rains come and those tunnels flood? What happens when the soil shifts and buries your families alive? You've dug death traps and called them passages. Stanislaw had anticipated this. The tunnels slope gently toward drainage pits at each end. Water flows out, not in, and the wooden supports distribute weight across the entire length. Our grandfathers dug tunnels in Poland that still stand after 200 years. The earth does not shift when properly braced. And the air. You've sealed yourselves in holes beneath the ground. How does your family breathe when the passage fills? With lamp smoke and human exhalation? Each cabin entrance allows fresh air to enter. The temperature difference creates natural draft. Warm air rises through one entrance while cool air descends through another. The passages breathe like living things. We have tested this. The air stays fresh. The first real test came on November 12th. A sudden storm dropped temperatures to 5 degrees with winds gusting to 40 miles per hour, reducing visibility to 0 within minutes. Above ground, the world became a white wall of screaming death. Below ground, the Cowell children walked to the Maurer cabin for their daily lessons with Wojciech's wife, who taught reading and arithmetic to all the network's children. They traveled 200 feet through 50-degree air, arrived warm and dry, and spent the afternoon learning while the storm raged uselessly above. When evening came, they walked home through the same calm passage, emerging into their own kitchen as if the blizzard did not exist. Sophia noticed it first during that storm. The tunnel walls feel warm. I touch them and they hold steady temperature while the wind above would freeze my hand in seconds. The earth remembers no season, Stanislaw said, pressing his palm against the packed soil of the passage. Wall. 8 foot down, it is always the same. The storm above could last a week. The tunnel would not know. By late November, the advantages had become impossible to ignore. The 4 Polish families visited each other daily regardless of weather. The children played together in any cabin, walking underground between homes as casually as American children walked between rooms. The women shared cooking duties, trading meals through passages that laughed at blizzards. Tadeusz, the blacksmith, repaired tools for all 4 families without anyone facing the cold. Farmers brought broken implements through the tunnels and retrieved them repaired the same way. The Americans say, "We live like animals in burrows," Marta Wisniewski said one November evening, nursing her infant while visiting the Kowalik cabin through the diagonal passage. But their animals freeze in barns they cannot reach. Our animals are fed because our men walk underground too. The outholdings we connected last week. Let them say what they wish. Stanislaw touched the wooden door, sealing the tunnel entrance. December will bring the killing storms. Their families will huddle alone, watching chimney smoke they cannot reach. Our families will visit for dinner parties while the wind searches for us above and finds nothing. January 1893 arrived with a brutality that old-timers would reference for decades. An Arctic front descended from Canada on January 5th, driving temperatures from a manageable 6 degrees to -28 by midnight. Dawn on January 6th brought -35. By the morning of January 10th, the thermometer outside the general store in Langdon read -42 degrees. The wind howled across the flat prairie. At 35 miles per hour, driving wind chills past -70, reducing visibility to zero, creating conditions where a man could die walking 20 feet from his own door. The homesteads, with separate cabins, suffered first and worst. Charles Whitmore lost 2 cattle on January 7th, animals that froze in a barn he could not reach through the blinding white. He had tried 3 times to walk the 150 feet between house and barn, turning back each time when the world disappeared into screaming. Nothing. By morning, the cattle had frozen, standing upright, monuments to the distance that storms made. Impassable. Across Cavalier County, the story repeated in every isolated homestead. The Hendricks family ran out of firewood on January 9th because the husband could not reach the woodpile 40 ft from his door. They burned furniture while watching a full quart of split would sit untouched beneath snow they could not navigate. The Olson children developed frostbite when their father attempted to reach the well and became disoriented, wandering for 20 minutes before stumbling back to his own porch. By accident, a bachelor farmer named Morrison was found frozen on January 12th, so halfway between his cabin and his outhouse, 30 feet that became infinite. In the white blindness, every isolated cabin became a prison. Families watched. Chimney smoke from neighbors they could not reach. Livestock died in barns that might as well have been in another country. Wells froze because no one could travel to them. The storm did not merely bring cold. It brought absolute separation, cutting every family off from every resource more than arm's length away. Nobody thought about the Polish compound during those first desperate days. They had their own survival to manage. At the Kowalczyk cabin, Stanislaw woke on the morning of January 10th, the worst day of the cold snap, to the smell of fresh bread. Zofia had walked through the tunnel to the Vizki cabin at dawn, borrowed yeast from Marta, and returned home to bake. The journey took 4 minutes each way through 50 degrees passages while -42 raged above. The children were already gone, traveling underground to the Missouri cabin for morning lessons. They would return for lunch, walk to the Kaminsky cabin for afternoon play with the Kaminsky daughters, and come home for dinner, all without ever seeing the storm that trapped every American family in terrified isolation. Tadash walked the tunnel to the underground barn extension they had dug in late September, fed all 4 families, consolidated livestock, collected eggs from the shared hen house, and distributed supplies through the network. No animal froze. No family went hungry. No one faced the killing wind. By January 12th, the 4 Polish families had settled into a routine that ignored the apocalypse above. Meals rotated between cabins. Lunch at the Mazurs, dinner at the Wisniewskis, breakfast at the Kaminskis. The women sewed together in whichever cabin had best light. The men played cards in the evenings after chores were complete. The children knew every tunnel by heart, racing through passages that held steady 50 degrees while their American counterparts shivered in isolated cabins they dared not leave. Morrison froze, walking to his outhouse. Voyage reported after hearing news from a traveler who had braved the roads between storms 30 ft from his door. They found him this morning. Stanislaw shook his head slowly. We walked more than 1,000 feet. Today between all our visits. All of us warm, all of us alive. He died walking 30 feet because he walked above ground. We live walking 1,000 feet because we walk below. Charles Whitmore reached the Kowalik cabin just afternoon on January 14th. The walk had taken nearly 4 hours. Through snow that squeaked like crushed glass beneath his boots, fighting wind that knocked him sideways with every gust. His face was raw beneath 3 scarves wrapped tight. His fingers ached Inside 4 pairs of mittens. He had lost sight of his destination twice and found it again only by stumbling into fence posts he followed by touch. 2. Miles had nearly killed him. He came because he had to know. He had lost 4 cattle and nearly lost himself walking to his own barn. Morrison had frozen 30 FT from his door. The Hicks family was burning furniture and the poles. The poles had smoke rising from all 4 chimneys as if nothing was happening, as if the killing storm was someone else's problem. He found Stanislaw emerging from a wooden door set into the ground beside his cabin, a hatch that led to nothing visible above the surface. Whitmore. Stanislaw showed no surprise. I wonder when you would come. Come inside. Warm yourself. What is that? Whitmore pointed at the ground-level hatch. Where does that? Lead? Everywhere. Come, I will show you. Whitmore followed Stanislaw through the cabin and down a ladder into the earth. The change was immediate and shocking. The cold that had pressed against him for 4 hours vanished. The air hung still and warm, 50 degrees, perhaps 52. The screaming wind above became silence. He stood in a passage 5 feet tall and 4 feet wide. Oil lamps, flickering in wall niches, packed earth walls curving away into darkness in both directions. This connects to the Missouri cabin, i.e. 200 foot east. Stanislaw pointed. Down the passage. Walk with me. They walked. Whitmore felt warmth seeping back into his frozen limbs. The tunnel air pressed against him like a blanket. After 200 feet, they climbed a ladder into the Mazur kitchen where Wojciech's wife was teaching 6 children arithmetic. All the children from all 4 families gathered as if the storm above did not exist. The children walked here this morning. Stanislaw said 400-foot round trip. They will walk home for lunch, then to the Kaminsky cabin for afternoon play, then home for dinner. Perhaps 1,000 feet of walking today, all underground, all warm. 1,000 feet. Whitmore's voice was barely a whisper. Morrison died walking 30. They continued through the network. Stanislaw showed him the diagonal passages on the connections to the underground livestock shelter, the drainage systems that prevented flooding. They visited all 4 cabins without ever surfacing, emerging finally back at the Kowalczyk kitchen after walking nearly half a mile entirely. Underground. How much did this cost you? Whitmore asked. How much time? 1 summer. For families working together. Stanislaw poured hot tea for his frozen guest. Perhaps 600 hours of labor total. The same time your people spend cutting and hauling firewood each year. Firewood you cannot reach when storms come. My cattle froze because I could not reach them. Our cattle are fed twice daily. Walked to the underground barn this morning, fed all animals for all 4 families. Collected eggs, returned in 20 minutes. He wore no coat. He needed none. Whitmore wrapped his hands around the hot tea, feeling warmth he had not felt in days. My children have not left our cabin in 2 weeks. They stare at walls while we burn furniture to stay warm. Our children have visited every cabin in the network every day since the storms began. They play together. They learn together. They do not know what isolation means because they have never experienced it. Show me how to build this. Whitmore set down his tea. Show me everything. Show me how the supports work, how deep to dig, how to connect passages. I have 3 neighbors who will dig with me come spring. Stanislaw nodded slowly. In Poland, we say the earth shelters those who trust it. Your neighbors died walking above ground because they feared going below. The earth was waiting to save them. They simply never asked. Stanislaw walked Whitmore through every detail. They descended into the tunnel system again, this time with Whitmore studying construction rather than marveling at existence. Wooden supports every 6 feet, Stanislaw explained, pressing his palm against one of the frames Wojciech had designed. Oak or ash, hardwood that resists rot. The frame distributes weight across the entire span. The earth above presses down, but the pressure spreads across hundreds of feet rather than concentrating at any point. He showed Whitmore the excavation technique, how to dig at depth without destabilizing the soil above, how to shore up sections as they progressed, how to pack earth walls smooth to prevent crumbling. He explained the drainage slopes, the ventilation principles, armor, the optimal depth of 8 feet, where temperature held steady regardless of surface conditions. The first winter is the hardest, Stanislaus said. You dig all summer while your neighbors plant crops. They mock you for wasting time on holes. Then winter comes, and they die walking to their barns while you walk underground to visit neighbors for dinner. Charles Whitmore did not keep what he learned to himself. By January 20th, he had described the Polish tunnel network to every homesteader he encountered at the emergency supply distribution in Langdon. Most didn't believe him. A rancher named Patterson laughed outright. You're telling me those Poles dug 1,000 feet of tunnels, and now they're visiting each other for tea parties while we freeze? Charles, the cold has cracked your brain. I'm telling you what I walked with my own feet half a mile underground, without ever surfacing. 50 degrees the whole way, while Morrison froze walking 30 feet. Above, their children play together every day. Their livestock get fed twice daily. They share meals between 4 families while we burn furniture and watch our cattle freeze. The first visitor after Whitmore was a Norwegian immigrant named Eriksson, whose family had lost 3 horses trying to reach their barn during the storm. He arrived on January 22nd, desperate for any solution that might prevent the same tragedy next winter. Eriksson spent 5 hours in the tunnel network, walking every passage, examining every support beam, measuring dimensions with a knotted string. He asked questions about soil types, water drainage, and connection points. Stanislaw answered, patiently drawing diagrams on brown paper, ice explaining principles his grandfather had taught him in Lublin. The earth wants to help you, Stanislaw said. It holds warmth when the surface freezes. It holds cool when the surface bakes. It shelters those who dig into it. Your people build on top of the earth and fight it. Our people dig into the earth and work with it. By the end of January, Stanislaw had hosted 19 visitors. Each came skeptical. Each left quiet with understanding. A county surveyor named Crawford brought measuring instruments and documented every dimension. The 8-foot depth, the 5 feet height, the 4-foot width, the 6 feet spacing between supports, the 1,200 feet of total passage connecting 4 families into one compound. Charles Whitmore was first to ask for help planning his own network. I have 3 neighbors willing to dig come spring, he said, arriving in late February as the worst cold finally broke. Show me how to lay out the passages. Show me how to calculate support spacing for our soil type. Stanislaw studied Whitmore's rough sketches of 4 homesteads arranged in a loose cluster. You are fortunate. Your cabins sit closer together than ours. Perhaps 150 ft between each. Shorter tunnels mean less digging, faster completion. You could connect all 4 homes by August if you start in May. He looked up at the man who had called them gravediggers. In Poland, we say a village is not the houses above ground, but the connections between them. Your neighbors will become your family when you can reach them in any weather. The tunnels do not just save lives, they create community. You will discover this when your children walk underground to play with neighbors. Children while storms rage above and find nothing to kill. Stanislaw Wallach lived another 29 years on that homestead in Cavalier County. He died in the autumn of 1921, surrounded by children and grandchildren who had grown up walking underground between. For families that had become one. The original tunnel network he helped dig in 1892 was still functioning when he passed. Wooden supports still solid, packed earth walls still smooth oil, lamp niches still holding light through passages that had carried 3 generations between homes without ever facing the killing weather above. His son maintained the tunnels until 1958, when the last of the original family's descendants moved to Minneapolis for work. The passages stood empty for years before a historical society documented them as one of the only surviving immigrant tunnel networks in the Great Plains. The winter of 1893 remained the benchmark against which all subsequent Dakota winters were measured. Old-timers in Cavalier County would ask each other, "Is it as bad as 93?" And the answer was almost never yes. But even mild winters still sent families huddling in isolated cabins, watching neighbors' chimneys smoke they could not reach, losing livestock in barns that storms made inaccessible. Every frozen corpse found between buildings reminded those who had visited the Polish compound of the passages that could have saved them. By 1901, 7 homestead clusters in the region had incorporated some variation of the tunnel network principle. Not all were as extensive as Stanislaus' design. Charles Whitmore and his 3 neighbors completed a 4-cabin network by August 1893. Ammo connecting homes with 600 feet of passage that saved 2 lives that first winter when a November blizzard would have killed men walking above ground. A Swedish settlement 15 miles north built tunnel connecting their church, schoolhouse, and 6 family homes. An underground village that functioned as a single community regardless of weather. A German farming cooperative constructed passages linking their homes to a shared underground root cellar and livestock shelter, consolidating resources in ways that surface construction could never match. Each modification reflected local circumstances and family needs, but the core principle never changed. The earth held steady temperature while the surface tried to kill. Passages below ground transformed deadly journeys into pleasant walks. Connected families survived together while isolated families died alone. Dig into the earth. Trust its warmth. Build community where winter cannot reach. The principle. Stanislaus understood that underground passages provide safe transit and stable temperatures regardless of surface conditions appears today in every subway system, every underground walkway, connecting buildings in cold climates, every tunnel network that allows movement when surface conditions become impossible. Contemporary versions use concrete and steel instead of wooden supports and packed earth, but the core insight remains unchanged. The earth shelters those who trust it. The surface belongs to weather. Below ground belongs to humans who refuse to let weather separate them. Zofia Kowalik outlived Stanislaus by 6 years. She spent her final winters walking the tunnels they had dug together, visiting grandchildren, in cabins connected by passages that had carried 50 years of family traffic. After she passed, her daughter found a note tucked in a family Bible written in Zofia's careful Polish script. He said we should dig. The Americans said we were digging our own graves. We dug for 1 summer and walked underground for 29 winters. The Americans died walking 30 feet above ground while we walked 1,000 feet below and arrived warm. He remembered what Lublin taught him. The earth wants to shelter you if you ask. We asked. We dug 8 foot down and found 50 degrees waiting for us. Our children grew up together, walking between homes while storms raged above and found nothing to kill. For families, became one family. Isolation became impossible. Morrison froze walking to his outhouse. Our men walked to the barn twice daily and never felt cold. This was not graves. This was life. The earth held us while the sky tried to kill us. We trusted the earth. It never failed us. 29 winters, 1,000 feet of passage. Not one person lost to storms that killed our neighbors by the dozen. Dig into the earth. Walk beneath the killing wind. Live together while others die apart.